Welcome to my review of the Sony 16mm f2.8 and the ultra-wide and fisheye converters. The 16mm prime lens is for E-mount APS-C cameras only and has a filter size of 49mm. The aperture goes from 2.8 till 22. It costs around $240. The VCL ECU1 is a ultra-wide converter. It's compatible with the SEL16f28 and the SEL20f28. The reduction factor is 0.75, which gives you 12mm on the SEL16 and 60mm on the SEL20. You cannot attach any filters on it. The ECU1 is no longer produced. You can get used ones for $115. The VCL ECF1 is a fisheye converter with a reduction factor of 0.62, which gives you 10mm on the SEL16 and 12.4mm on the SEL20. Like the ECU1, you cannot attach any filters. Price is also $150 for a used one. The SEL16f28 is one of the smallest Sony E-mount lenses. It's only 23mm long. With an attached converter, the length is 75mm. The SEL16f28 is super light and weighs only 67 grams. Both converters are pretty heavy compared to this. Minimal focus distance is 0.24 meters, an average performance. Both converters also reduce the minimal focus distance, which is fun for macro shots. The SEL16 has 7 aperture blades like all common Sony APS-C E-mount lenses. Vignetting and distortion are pronounced on this lens. Stopping down to f5.6 helps a bit against vignetting. The ultra-wide converter increases distortion noticeably. On the fisheye converter, this distortion is a wanted optical effect. Transversal chromatic aberrations are visible on high contrast objects. They are definitely visible when cropping in on the SEL16. Longitudinal chromatic aberrations occur in out of focus areas. They seem to be well controlled by the in-camera correction on that lens. Color accuracy is measured with a color checker in DaVinci Resolve. But keep in mind that videography is about being creative. Maybe you want a lens that produces warm colors instead of accurate colors. The SEL16f28 performs quite okay in terms of color accuracy with an average result. To measure the general sharpness, I compared these test shots with all lenses I own. By multiplying the radius with the sharpness estimated by myself, I can calculate a certain sharpness value in percent. This is an example of how I calculate sharpness. Corner sharpness at f2.8 is nothing but devastating. In a small center area, sharpness is okay. How does the ultra-wide converter affect the sharpness? Not in a positive way, but not as bad as you would expect from a converter. When stepping down the SEL16 from f2.8 to f5.6, sharpness improves in the center, but corner performance is still awful. The ultra-wide converter surprisingly improves corner sharpness, but decreases center sharpness a bit. In comparison to other lenses, the SEL16f28 shows a pretty weak performance in terms of sharpness. Close-up sharpness in the corners is also pretty devastating. The ultra-wide converter again improves corner sharpness, yet it's still very soft. At f5.6, the center sharpness at 60mm is okay, but with no improvements in the corners. Better, but still weak corner sharpness is shown by the ECU1. In comparison to other lenses, the SEL16f28 stays pretty weak in terms of close-up sharpness. The test results of the SEL16f28 are the opposite of satisfying. Especially at f2.8, this lens is pretty soft. So let's take a look at some real-world examples. So, this is the Black Forest in southern Germany at 60mm f5.6. Sharpness and details are not satisfying for landscape photography. This is the ultra-wide converter, still not sharp enough for landscapes if you ask me. And this is the fisheye converter. Again, the SEL16 in a close-up scenario at f2.8. Now exactly the same slide with the ECU1. and finally the ECF1. Here are some shots to show you the bokeh ability of the 60mm at f2.8. I have to admit that I like the soft bokeh because it disguises the lack of corner sharpness. If you get really close to your subject, you can get quite a bokeh. Here are some shots with the ultra-wide converter at f5.6. It produces circular lens flares. Not really beautiful. The fisheye converter is fun for architecture shots. And dog noses look quite funny with it. Another cool thing you can do with it is attaching it to a DIY GoPro mouth mount. It gives it that typical GoPro look, which is great for extreme sports, like golf. So, here are my final thoughts on the SEL16f28. The best thing is that this lens is super light and compact, and it's compatible with both converters, but its optical performance is so bad that I do not consider it as an upgrade to the SELP1650. The SEL16f28 was introduced back in the days of the Sony Nex lineup. At that time, the kit lens was the SEL1855. With the nowadays available SELP1650, Sony offers a very compact wide-angle zoom lens with image stabilizer. So if you already own the new kit lens, the SEL16f28 would be no upgrade in terms of optical performance. What about the converters on the SEL16f28? Well, the ultra-wide converter somehow improves corner sharpness, but overall sharpness is still awfully soft. For that performance, it's still quite pricey, I think. A better choice would be the SEL10-18 if you can afford it. A cheaper alternative would be the Samyang 12mm f2.0, but be aware that it's manual focus only. The fisheye converter is currently the only fisheye solution with autofocus for E-mount APS-C cameras. There is another converter called SELECF2, but from what I read on the internet, it's basically the same, just in black, to match to the SEL20f28. I guess the optical performance on that lens is much better in comparison with the SEL16. That's why I'm thinking about selling my SEL16 and buying an SEL20f28 instead. For further information on how I tested my lenses, just watch my test explanation video. Bye bye.